and Amanda Jaguar from the Colorado Shakespeare Festival. We hope this session gives you an opportunity to engage in and learn more about the environmental and social dimensions of wellness. Please remember to visit the Health and Wellness Summit website for access to presentation slides and handouts, as well as the Qualtrics survey to provide feedback at the end of the session. Following the summit, a recording of this session will be available on the Health and Wellness Summit website as well. For those of you who are joining us virtually, please be sure that your microphones are muted. I will monitor the chat throughout the session and pass along questions at the end of the presentation. And now, please welcome Dr. Sarah Goodrum and Amanda Jaguar.
Thank you so much for inviting us to be here at the Health and Wellness Summit at the University of Colorado. We're thrilled to get to talk to you about a project we've been working on over the last year here at the University of Colorado. I'm a sociologist and criminologist here at the Center for the Study and Prevention of Violence at the University of Colorado Boulder. And I am thrilled to be presenting with Amanda Jaguar from the Colorado Shakespeare Festival on some lessons learned on violence prevention and upstander reporting that we are hoping to enlist your help with. This project is part of a really exciting collaboration between our center, the university's police department, and the Colorado Shakespeare Festival. And it is funded by a grant from the U.S. Department of Homeland Security and the Colorado Department of Public Safety. And the goal of this project is to try to educate the public on the warning signs for violence and the importance of upstander reporting in our community to try to prevent mass shootings like we have unfortunately experienced here in Colorado. The talk is divided into 3 parts. We'll talk a little bit about the current state of violence in the United States, the warning signs for violence, and strategies for being an upstander. And all of the entities I've described, the Department of Homeland Security, our local campus law enforcement, and the Colorado Department of Public Safety, as well as our research center, all recognize that all of us play a part in promoting community safety. And that is why we're hoping to get your help with this work. We know from recent statistics that violence, and particularly firearm-related violence, is on the rise in the United States. When we look at rates of violence and firearm violence in particular, over the last 4 years, we've seen an uptick both in firearm-related deaths and in mass shootings. When we look at firearm-related deaths, those deaths have increased by approximately 1,000 deaths per year from 2018 to 2021. When we look at the number of mass shootings that U.S. residents have experienced over the last 4 years, those have also increased. And the statistics have in fact doubled, from approximately 336 mass shootings in 2018 to 692 mass shootings in 2021. When we look at these firearm-related statistics specifically for Colorado, we find similarly alarming statistics. When we look at the number of mass shootings, those have increased 4-fold from 2017 to 2022. And the number of injuries related to mass shootings and firearm deaths have also increased significantly by 8-fold. These statistics cause us a tremendous amount of concern that we are not educating the public on what these warning signs look like and what people should do when they see them. And that's what this project is about. In our Center for the Study and Prevention of Violence, we frequently use the iceberg as a metaphor for trying to explain the level of problems that contribute to firearm violence in the United States. We think of the tip of the iceberg as illustrating the mass shootings, the firearm-related deaths, and the suicides that we are all unfortunately too familiar with. but also incredibly troubling is the amount of pain, angst, bullying, physical fights that are occurring at the surface of the water where the iceberg might rest. We know from statistics of high schoolers and middle schoolers that 22% of high school students in the United States describe having experienced a physical fight in the last 12 months at school. 25% of middle schoolers describe having experienced bullying. Deeper below the surface of the water are also troubling concerns, including structural racism, collective trauma, and other types of abuse that maybe have not yet come to our attention. We use the iceberg metaphor to try to convey the idea that we need to be looking at this problem from multiple perspectives and with multiple agencies: law enforcement, schools, hospitals, mental health providers, and others. And we need them all to be coming together to work toward raising awareness about the warning signs for violence. Research consistently finds that using a comprehensive and integrated public health approach to violence prevention is the best strategy. That means that we are bringing together all of these agencies to try to address these problems together in unison, so that it's not a law enforcement problem, it's not a school problem. Instead, it's a social problem that we all need to address together. This public health approach means that we are taking a multi-level or multi-tiered approach to the issue of violence in our country. And that means we are looking to try to provide interventions and prevention strategies at several different tiers. In the public health model, we have 3 tiers. And in our center, we've started using swimming and water safety as a way to illustrate these tiers. At the tier 1 level of the public health model, we're trying to educate the public on the issue at hand. We're trying to give people in our community the skills they need to stay safe. We can think of swimming lessons as a great example of a tier 1 intervention. We're trying to give kids the skills they need to be safe around water. At the tier 2 level of the public health approach, we are providing interventions for people who are at higher risk for the concerning behavior. Using the swimming metaphor, we could think of giving a life preserver to someone who's near a body of water that might help them should they happen to fall in. And then at the tier 3 level of the public health model, we are looking to deliver very targeted interventions to people who are already in trouble. They've already fallen into the water, and we need to throw them a lifeline. We use these same 3 levels of intervention and prevention for violence. And today, I'm going to focus on the tier 1 level, the swimming lessons for violence prevention. Using public awareness. We're trying to raise awareness about what the warning signs for violence look like. Because we know in all of the post-attack investigations that have occurred in the United States, whether it's Sandy Hook, Arapahoe High School, Marjory Stoneman Douglas High School, or Robb Elementary, we know in all of those cases, the post-attack investigations revealed that there were numerous missed opportunities to intervene with the attacker in that case. That people noticed something wasn't right, but they didn't know who to tell or what to do about it. In the Arapahoe High School case, which our center was involved in that post-attack investigation report, we identified 27 different missed opportunities to intervene with the attacker. What we want to do is learn from these tragic lessons and put those learnings into action so that we can be better prepared and get people the help they need. The U.S. Secret Service and Department of Education conducted a groundbreaking study in 2004 called the Safe School Initiative. In that study, they looked at 37 school attacks that had happened in the United States between 1974 and 2000. What they learned from that project was that these kinds of mass shootings are not impulsive events. They're not random, as they might seem. They're actually very carefully planned over weeks, months, and sometimes years. Even in the case at Columbine High School that happened here in Colorado in 1999, the evidence indicates that those attackers very meticulously planned that act of violence. What this evidence tells us is that these planning activities are observable, and that means that they are opportunities for us to intervene. The Safe School Initiative found that in 51% of the attackers they examined, they had engaged in an observable planning behavior prior to their deadly rampage. 81% communicated their plan to attack in diary writings and comments to classmates and to friends. And in 93% of cases, the attackers exhibited behavior that caused others tremendous concern. What these warning signs tell us is that they are opportunities to intervene. But we need to be aware of what those warning signs are. That Secret Service and Department of Education study identified 10 or 11 key warning signs and risk factors that we're working really hard here at the University of Colorado to try to promote education and awareness about. Through this presentation, a social media campaign, and also presentations that we're delivering to students and faculty. The warning signs and risk behaviors for targeted violence are as follows. Number one, intense or escalating anger that does not fit the scale of the situation, that makes other people uncomfortable, that gives you pause. Second, unusual interests in weapons that go beyond what we would think of as relevant for hunting or perhaps an interest in joining the military or law enforcement. Threats and or an intent to attack. The threats are sometimes communicated directly and other times indirectly. And we are today often seeing those threats being expressed in social media platforms. Interest in or history of violence. One recent study from the Secret Service found that more than 60% of attackers in mass shootings had had a domestic violence incident in their history. Depression or isolation that is going unaddressed. Grade or attendance issues or unemployment. And sometimes it's a job loss that can prompt a grievance that can fuel frustration and anger. Changes in behavior or appearance, and we saw an example of this actually in Colorado with the Aurora Theater attacker who changed the color of his hair prior to his attack. Talk of being bullied, and what the Secret Service and FBI are really starting to emphasize with this particular concern is that it's not just the actual evidence that someone's been bullied, but it's also the perception that they have been persecuted, picked on, or bullied. That's critically important to try to understand. It's not just that there's actual bullying taking place, it's whether the individual feels as though they've been bullied that we really want to try to understand. Because that perception can fuel a grievance, that can fuel an interest in threatening behavior. Relationship difficulties, either with friends or with intimate partners, harassment of others, and suicidal ideation and or a history of self-harm can be concerning behaviors to be worried about. What both the Secret Service and the FBI have emphasized is that it's not just one of these behaviors that would raise a warning flag of concern. What we tend to see is a constellation of 5 or more of these behaviors happening in an individual over a period of time that we want to try to address. The 3 behaviors that we think are most critical to try to be aware of and raise people's understanding of are the three that you see highlighted here: intense or escalating anger, an unusual interest in weapons, and threats and/or an intent to attack. And the Secret Service is also starting to emphasize this history of violence. One of their most recent studies found that mass shooters had frequently had prior encounters with law enforcement prior to their attack. And so we want to be thinking of those encounters with law enforcement as opportunities for intervention. And we have a particular area of this particular project that's trying to address that with our local police department here on campus. But we know that this is difficult. So we would love to hear your thoughts on how do you think these warning signs show up? How do you think they're exhibited in people? And I'll go back to that slide so that you can look at them. Talk amongst yourself for a few minutes. How do you think that you would see them in a friend or loved one or acquaintance's behavior? And then we'd love to hear your thoughts. And we'll be monitoring the chat if we can. Okay. We have no chat, but we hope we'll have chatter here. Yeah. Yeah. All right, we'd love to hear your thoughts. So what are some of the ways you could imagine some of these warning signs showing up in someone in your social circle? Social media, how so?
To the extent that people communicate on social media, that's
Yeah.
where it will leak out.
Yeah. They are engaging, especially adolescents, engage a lot in social media, Snapchat, TikTok, and so they may be exhibiting some of this concerning behavior. Yeah. We did see that in the Parkland case. That attacker posted a lot of pictures of himself with his firearm prior to his attack. How else? Yeah.
I think you might hear like fellow employees complaining a lot about grievances that they have.
Yes. You might hear fellow employees talking about the grievance the person has, that they're talking about a lot, they're frustrated by, they're trying to get someone's attention to address. Yeah. Yeah.
Lots of blaming. It's everybody else's fault, but no ownership for any of it.
Yes. Blaming someone else for the misfortunes they've experienced, not focusing on their contribution to it. Yes. Yes. Great examples. Any others? Yeah.
There have been instances of individuals ordering a ton of ammunition.
Yes. Persons collecting a lot of ammunition. Yes. Huge red flag. Huge red flag. And I think in retrospect, we look back on those instances and think, how could people have not noticed that they were amassing these kinds of weapons and ammunition? What do you think people sometimes say when, how did you not know? He was your own kid. How did you not know he had a room full of ammunition? How do you think it escapes us? Pardon?
Let him in his room.
Yeah. When someone's planning something like this, they've already tested a lot of boundaries. And that tends to wear people out. And it's very difficult to continue breaking through because they've established the boundary. You can't come into my room without knocking. Then it's you can't come into my room, period. I deserve privacy. I should have a say in who comes in here. And so that can be really difficult for parents to navigate. Yeah, very difficult. Good. Great examples. Well, we know that this is really challenging work, so one of the things we want to talk about through this project is strategies that you can use to be an upstander. Upstanders tips provide critical information for intervention and investigation. And there's been research done by the National Policing Foundation that looks at the events that led up to successfully averted attacks. And in case after case, that project has found that it was upstanders, and oftentimes someone not directly connected to the person of concern, that raised the red flag, that prompted the investigation, that allowed for an inquiry, and to get the person help. And we've seen a recent shift in the discussion about using terms like upstander and bystander. We've started using the term bystander because of this shift, or we've started using the term upstander because of this shift, because it connotes more action than the term bystander does. And we think of upstanders as a person who's taking action when they see concerning or threatening behavior. And Kim Scott, an author and a CEO from tech companies, has identified 5 different types of upstander interventions that we could think about using when we see concerning behavior. One is direct. Be direct and address the concern the minute you see it. You could distract the person, redirect the conversation or the behavior as a way of trying to change the direction of the harm that might be taking place. You can delegate. You could ask another trusted adult, ask an official at the school, at the university, at law enforcement to try to intervene on your behalf. You can delay. You could check back in with the person who you believe was being targeted or harmed and ask them how they're doing, and there's something you can do to help. And you can document. You can make note of the issue you saw, write an email to a supervisor, make a report, or reach out to a supervisor for help, or law enforcement. These 5 types of upstander interventions give us some ideas that it's not just one way that we can intervene to get someone help. There's actually many different ways we can do this. We're going to focus on 2 of these upstander interventions: delegate and document. But we know that this is hard to do, so we want to ask you all, why do we sometimes hesitate? Why aren't we just direct? Why don't we just say, you can't do that. You can't say that. That's not okay. Why don't we just step forward? Why is it so hard? Yeah.
We're afraid to escalate the situation.
We're afraid to escalate the situation. Yeah, they already look pretty angry. I don't want to make it worse. Why else? Yeah.
Particularly here at the university, often there's a part of the culture where you see this at other organizations, it's conflict avoidance.
Yes.
You want to try to get along with everyone, so
Yes.
everyone sort of finds a way around
Yes.
the individual.
Yes. We'll dance around the issue like, okay, that I don't like how that went, but I don't want to address it directly. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe we can just let this one go. Hopefully it's not going to happen again. Yeah. Conflict avoidant. What else? Yeah.
The individual may not want to be injured or hurt.
Yes. You may not want to put yourself in harm's way. And Kim Scott, she's written several really interesting books about how we could use these upstander strategies in the workplace. One's called Just Work, the other's called Radical Candor. She makes the point that depending on your positionality in the situation, it may not be safe for you to intervene. If you're of a smaller stature and the person of concern is larger, if you think that that person may have a weapon, or if you're perhaps someone who's lower in ranking in the organization than the person of concern, it may not be safe for you, physically, emotionally, or otherwise, to step forward and intervene. And these are all reasonable explanations for why more people don't step forward when they see concerning behavior. But we want to work to try to build an upstander culture at the university and in our community. And we want to convey the idea that we're not reporting these concerns to get people in trouble. We want to share these concerns so that we can get people help. All of these kinds of warning signs are cries for help that we should try to pay attention to and get the person the help and resources that they need. So we want to encourage the sharing of concerns. We want to it gives us the opportunity for earlier intervention, which means we can prevent and create a culture of compassion and protection. At the University of Colorado Boulder, we actually have a lot of great avenues for reporting safety concerns. We can reach out to the Students of Concern team. We can reach out to the Title IX office. We can also reach out to Colorado's Safe to Tell system, which has actually been in existence since 2004 and was created after the attack at Columbine to try to provide Coloradans an anonymous way to report their safety-related concerns. You can download the app, save the number, or visit the website to report a safety-related concern. This QR code will take you right to their website, and we have a lot of great swag about Safe to Tell over on the table in the front that you can grab before you leave, or if you're online, we will send it to you through campus mail, so just shoot me an email and we'll get it to you. The Safe to Tell system was created in 2004, and it was created because the investigation that followed the attack at Columbine found that high school students did not want to rat on their peers. They didn't want to get people in trouble. So the Safe to Tell system was created to give people anonymous ways to report their safety-related concerns. The calls are answered 24/7 from a live response operator who can ask questions and get follow-up information about the safety-related concern. The system, though, has primarily only been promoted in K through 12 settings in Colorado, and this project is seeking to raise more awareness about it as a resource here at the university. And it's actually been here at the university for almost 20 years. It's just not been well used up to now. The tips that come into Safe to Tell are investigated by multidisciplinary teams, law enforcement and co-responders who can look at the situation and figure out what needs to be done to keep the person or people safe. And this is a great strategy for upstanders to use if they are concerned about some of those reporting issues. I'm now going to hand it over to Amanda Giguère, who's going to tell us about how we can practice some of these upstander strategies.
Great, thank you, Sarah. Can you all hear me okay? I'm glad the rain stopped because I couldn't hear a lot during the rain. So as Sarah mentioned, my name is Amanda Giguère. I am the Director of Outreach at the Colorado Shakespeare Festival, which is a professional theater company here at CU Boulder. And I'm just going to give a brief overview of one way that we at the Colorado Shakespeare Festival have put a lot of the research that CSPV has shared into practice, into an arts-based program for Colorado's K-12 schools. So for the past 12 years, it's hard to believe it's been 12 years, CSF has partnered with the Center for the Study and Prevention of Violence on a school touring program focused on Shakespeare and violence prevention, in which professional actors visit Colorado schools, perform an abridged Shakespeare play for K-12 students, and then they do follow-up interactive workshops in which they take moments of conflict from the play and they invite students to practice their own upstander strategies. And just our impact numbers, I think this number is a little bit off. Since 2011, we have reached over 126,000 Colorado students, and 89% of those students, after working with our actors, they self-report that they are likely to take action as upstanders, in whatever way that might be. That might be calling Safe to Tell, that might be directly intervening and saying to someone, hey, that's not cool. But that's the culture that we want to begin shifting, is getting kids more comfortable with being upstanders. We're also able to track, although Safe to Tell reports are anonymous, we can track reports that come from the schools we visit. And so each school that our actors visit, usually we see an increase in Safe to Tell reports from that school, which is what we want to see. So many people ask, why are you using theater to teach violence prevention? What do these things have in common? And we continue to find overlaps between our two disciplines, between theater and violence prevention. And in many ways, we are working towards the same things. First of all, watching theater and creating theater is a way of building empathy muscles. Just like an actor puts themselves into a character's shoes to think about that character from the inside rather than judging that character. So we want all people to be thinking about the world from the perspective of other people. That can be a really healthy thing to do if we want to begin creating an upstander culture. Theater also helps us build connectedness. We have a lot of people working together towards a common goal to create something meaningful. And our research partners often talk about connectedness as a key protective factor in reducing violence. So feeling connected to your community, to your peer group, having a trusted adult that you can talk to, these are all really powerful things that can help us not only prevent violence, but actually help young people thrive. The third bullet point I have here is this notion of change. Our research partners often talk about how violence is preventable. We don't have to take all of this, as the way we have to be, but we can make a difference. We can prevent violence. Theater is an art form that is rooted in change, and actors are constantly transforming before our very eyes. And when we think about the roles an actor plays, we can shift from one role to the next. Just like in life, no one is born a bully. We have the opportunity to change our behaviors and to make different choices. But the last point that we continue to find as a key overlap between theater and violence prevention is this concept of rehearsing and practicing. We spend a lot of time when we're making plays practicing our craft in the safety of a rehearsal room. And that's a really important part of the process so that we can feel safe and comfortable in the choices that we're going to be presenting before an audience. That kind of practice and rehearsing is something that is really helpful when it comes to violence prevention strategies as well. Because as much as I'm sure every single one of us in this room would like to be able to say, well, of course, if I see mistreatment, I'm going to take action. But the research and the data suggest that we don't always do that because it's hard, because many of the reasons that you all talked about, I don't know if it's my business, I don't want to create conflict. There are a lot of things that stand in the way. But we know that if we want to shift toward an upstander culture, we have to start practicing those kinds of behaviors before we need them. So that's what we do in the Shakespeare and Violence Prevention Program, is we give young people the chance to practice their own upstander strategies in the safety of their classroom before they need them. We practice a lot of skills in this world. When we're young, we practice tying our shoes and riding a bike and writing in cursive, maybe not so much anymore. And as we get older, we practice skills too. We take driving lessons, we practice CPR. So we know that upstander behavior can be really effective in preventing violence. So we need to be giving ourselves the opportunities to practice those skills, to feel what it feels like to actually take action as an upstander. So I'm not going to make anyone act today, don't you worry. But I do ask that you just take a big deep breath in through your nose, feel your belly filling up with air, out through your mouth, and just keep on breathing in through the nose and out through the mouth. And you've heard a lot of information during this presentation about violence and statistics and violence prevention and warning signs. And you may notice maybe your body's holding a little more tension than usual. Maybe it's the same amount of tension that you always hold in your body. I don't know. But just be gentle to yourself if you need to do a few shoulder rolls. We're going to take a moment to think through one potential scenario, maybe more if we have time, but probably just one scenario, that you might encounter, which might be showing you some red flag behaviors, some warning signs. And we're doing this because it's a way of practicing our own upstander strategies in ideally a low stakes setting, a safe setting. Here we are in the Glenn Miller Ballroom where no one's going to get hurt based on what we decide to do as our upstander strategy. So I do ask that you find a partner or two. You can turn to a neighbor. I like this little cluster of friends here talking. So feel free to, if you need to move tables and come a little bit closer so you have someone to talk to. I'm going to ask you to talk to your neighbors about a potential scenario. And I want you to be thinking about, first of all, what's concerning about this situation. Is there red flag behavior that we're seeing? And second of all, what are some strategies that you would feel comfortable thinking about or doing? What are some actions that you could realistically take as yourself, not as some fictional person with different power, different abilities, different, you, what would you do in this scenario? This situation might be difficult to think through, and some of us may have lived experience that directly relates to what we're going to be thinking about. So I do ask that you just be mindful of how you're doing and take care of yourself. We have water and coffee over here if you need to take a break. Okay, so scenario number one. While you're scrolling through Twitter, X, you see a post from a friend's son that shows a picture of a firearm and makes reference to getting even at school. Okay, so that's our scenario. So in your small group, and for folks who are watching on the Vimeo, if you don't have someone to turn and talk to, I encourage you to write down your responses or even talk to yourself. That's one of my favorite things to do. So think about what is concerning about this situation and what steps would you take to address it. We will take about 1 minute to think through these things. And don't forget to introduce yourself to your partner, please, and thank you. Okay, great. You think, yes, skipping. Skipping and then leaving time for questions. I think so. Yeah. And I can call you Colin. I hear a lot of rich conversations happening, a lot of ideas, and I want you to remember there is no right or wrong solution here, and there also is not one magic fix-all thing that you're going to do that could stop all the violence all forever and always. So just keeping that in mind, I wonder if anyone in the room is willing to share some of the ideas you talked about. What are some strategies? First of all, question number one, is anything concerning about this Twitter X post? I'm seeing some nods, yeah.
You said about every third word.
Every third word, yes. I mean, the whole thing is concerning. We've got a picture of a firearm making reference to getting even at school. So if we think back to Sarah's list of warning signs, what are we seeing? Interest in weapons was one, right? Any other warning signs we're seeing here? Anger, yep. Great. Perceived bullying, yep, yeah, and those were the real big ones, yeah. So we have a real threat, so I'm seeing a lot of nods that this is something that warrants some kind of upstander action. So what are some of the things that you talked about in your groups? What might you feel comfortable doing? Can I call in this group down here? Oh yes, go ahead, go for it.
Stephanie and I were talking, we would definitely talk to our friend.
You talk to your friend, yeah. Yeah.
The first thing is talk to our friend about their son. Let them know that we came across a Twitter feed.
Great. So the first thing we do is talk to the friend because we have a direct connection here. Okay, can I ask you, or both of you, to actually practice that with me? Because sometimes putting it into language, and I promise it's not acting you're gonna have to do because you are the expert on you and your voice. Would one of you feel comfortable, you don't have to come up on stage, we can do it from right here, but I'm the friend, and maybe we can give you a microphone too. Is that too much pressure? What's your name? What's your name?
Hopeton.
Hopeton?
Yes.
I'm Amanda. So what do you want the friend's name to be in this scenario?
Amanda.
Amanda. So, great. And we're friends. We've known each other a long time, and you saw this concerning information that my son has posted online.
Right.
All right. Hi, Hopeton. I'm assuming this is a phone call. I don't know.
I don't know, yeah.
Yeah, Hopeton. Hi. What's up?
Hi, Amanda. How you doing?
I'm good. How are you?
I would just like to, I have a little concern. Hope you're doing okay. But I was on my Twitter feed, and I happened to see your son online, and
Yeah.
he looked like he was brandishing a weapon, and he was angry about the school.
Oh, my God.
I'm not sure what's wrong or what's going on, but maybe that's something you'd like to address.
Oh, my God. Hopeton, when was this?
This was about 5 days ago.
5 days ago?
Yeah.
And you're just telling me now? Hopeton?
Yeah, I've been busy.
Okay, I don't have Twitter or X or whatever you're talking about, so I don't even know I don't know what to do.
Well, that's okay. I took some screenshots, and I can text them to you so you can take a look.
Okay.
I mean,
And
it's hard to see the picture. I don't know if the weapon is real or not. I don't know if he's spoofing or joking around with his friends, but let me forward you the pictures.
Yeah, okay.
Okay.
Thank you for letting me know, Hopeton. I appreciate it.
Do you think we should go further, or do you want to take a look first? Do you want to talk to your son?
I would love to talk to my son. Yeah, thank
Okay.
you.
All right.
Okay.
If I don't hear back from you in 24 hours, I'm going to call the school.
Oh my God. Okay, Hopeton, thank you. Yeah, I'll talk to him. Thanks. And scene. Everyone give it up for Hopeton. That was amazing. Yeah, how did that feel, just putting that into your voice and practicing it?
Felt normal to me.
Yeah, you did great. Anyone want to share what you appreciated about that particular strategy, Hopeton's strategy? Yeah.
I liked that he told you that he was gonna follow up. Because
Hopeton said, I'm going to follow up with you, Amanda.
Because we talked about, like, we would talk to the parent, but then they might dismiss it or feel like it's not that big a deal and not do anything about it.
Yeah, so there's the risk that the person you're talking to, that it doesn't go well. And there could have been a lot of different ways that scenario played out. The reaction could have been, Hopeton, how dare you? My son is just going through a hard time. How dare you invade his, whatever it, So we can't predict what the response is going to be. But yeah, Hopeton was sort of actually approaching it in multiple ways. So there's this direct intervention, and there's the delegating, getting other help too, right? Yeah. Other things that we appreciated about this strategy? I'm back.
I think it was good that he said he was going to follow up, but also deferred to you about what you wanted to do first to kind of circumvent some of that potential, like, how dare you accuse my son of doing this? How dare you?
Great. So I'm going to repeat that so that people listening in the Vimeo can hear that. Yeah, that Hopeton said, I'm going to take this action, but also putting sort of the onus back on Amanda, engaging Amanda in the conversation as well. Yep. Great job. Yeah. Other thoughts?
You offered a way to send the information over because you didn't know how to use Twitter.
Great. So we have a Twitter illiterate person. So Hopeton offered a way. Hopeton, prior to this screenshot, Hopeton used all of the upstander strategies actually, documented, delegated, and had a direct intervention. And delay, but probably we have a delay as well because Hopeton's going to check back in with me later. I don't remember what the fourth D is, Sarah.
Couldn't distract.
Distract. Yeah, that would be a kind of hard one, yeah. But we have the documentation and all the areas of, I'm going to follow up with you this way. Yeah, that's great. Thank you, Hopeton. Thanks, well done. What other strategies came up in your small groups? I saw a lot of wheels turning, yeah.
Timing was, well, that's what you said. Timing's important, so is it, Mark was saying, it's his idea, right before school, right before a big event,
The timing of when we see the threat.
you saw the threat, or,
Yeah.
Is it, this was, I'm just now remembering, it was 5 days ago. Those things might trigger, what are those strategies, who do you need to call?
Yeah, so I'm just going to repeat that back so the timing really matters. Are you seeing this in the late night hours where maybe calling law enforcement is going to be the thing you do? Are you seeing it during the school day? We're getting a hold of the school immediately. And in Hopeton's case, we had a 5-day delay, which Hopeton, I really hope that you, I don't want to shame anyone for their upstander strategies, but yeah, I mean, thinking about this, the speed with which you act and the specific context. Yeah. Sarah, is there, oh yeah, go ahead.
And I'd probably approach it obviously from a little different lens.
Yeah.
I see this as no different than I would see a serious injury traffic accident. In that I'm assuming at face value, people are hurt or could get hurt, and that action needs to be taken, and it needs to be done in a timely manner, not knowing how bad that will be. And so to take that statement at face value, I see, could this be at an after-school event? Could this be at a basketball game? Could this be at, name it, and in that time frame now, we don't know if that statement is face value, what the preceding minutes may be, right? And that could be taking effect. So for me, this is, and of course I take it at a different lens, right? And in law enforcement, it would be a call to either 911 or an anonymous reporting source like Safe to Tell, knowing the systems then go into action very quickly to engage it, and will engage you as the parent, will help engage with the son in a manner that hopefully if there is a threat, it's quickly being identified. And is there a plan already that's in motion?
That's great. Yeah, I like that you're not leaving any guest room. And this is something that when we're working with young kids, often there's, I don't know, am I right? Is this really a risk? I don't know. And I like that you're saying, I see a risk and I'm going to take action. Something that we emphasize with young people in terms of, do I call Safe to Tell? Do I talk to a trusted adult? That what we share with them is, if it's important enough for you to be concerned, it's important enough for us to know about it. So better to take action than to not. And the other thing we emphasize about Safe to Tell is that by reporting it, you're not putting yourself in charge of coming up with the solution. You are getting the information to the people who need to know it. That's great. Sarah, are there other strategies you would emphasize here?
I think all of the strategies that you all have described are excellent.
Yeah.
These are Oscar-worthy performances here.
100%.
And trusted adults, Safe to Tell, the direct communication to the parent, and then I think it's really helpful to indicate that you would follow up. We know from these post-attack investigations that oftentimes it was multiple people reporting the concerns to different officials that allowed people to come together to figure out, oh gosh, 4 different people have said something about this Twitter post. Let's look into that. So don't pause and think, well, somebody else is going to take care of it, or I already mentioned it once to the mom. It's very helpful to follow up, re-report it, check back in with the parent, so that you can make sure that it's genuinely being investigated, assessed, and managed going forward.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you for thinking through some of these strategies. Hopeton, thank you for being an actor when you didn't sign up for that. Appreciate it, you did great. But thinking through these scenarios and actually practicing them in our own bodies and figuring out, what words would I use? How does it feel? Maybe, do I feel nervous when I'm having this phone call? Practice, practice, practice. In rehearsal the other day, one of our actors said, practice makes permanent, which I really, really love. This idea that if we want to get better at cultivating an upstander culture, it takes practice. So I encourage you to think through some of these scenarios ahead of time, so that when the time comes that we might need them outside of the safety of this room, then we're more ready to use them. With that, I'll turn it back over to Sarah.
Thank you, Amanda. So we hope that you'll also practice these strategies and talk about them with your friends, family, and your kids, because we do know that that practice is incredibly helpful for actually intervening in a way that makes a difference. We'd love for you all to take 2 surveys today. One is for CSPV to gauge how you're feeling about the information you've received and the skills that you've practiced. We have a second survey that's for the Health and Wellness Summit that we'd also love to ask for you to complete in the last few minutes of our presentation here, so that the Health and Wellness Summit can receive feedback on how things are going for you. And as you work on those surveys, we wanted to open it up for questions for a few minutes. Does anybody have questions? Yeah, Hopeton.
Do we know, or is there any statistics about Safe to Tell, the application? How many staff, students, faculty are actually using it? Has it been used?
Yes.
Any numbers at all, anywhere?
Yes, we have numbers both at the University of Colorado and for the overall state. In last academic year, 2022 to 2023, the state of Colorado received more than 19,000 tips to Safe to Tell. At the University of Colorado, when this project started, we were receiving somewhere between 3 and 7 tips approximately a year. Since the start of this project, it's increased significantly, so that we're receiving about 30 tips a semester at this stage of our project. We just launched the social media campaign, part of this work, on August 18th, and so we're hoping that that'll help get the word out as well about it as being a great avenue for reporting safety-related concerns on campus.
Right.
Yeah. Other questions? Okay, well, we have free t-shirts, carabiners, bottle openers, notebooks that we'd love for you to take with you, or for you and your staff, over here on the table as a part of the promotion awareness campaign for this work. So thank you all so much for being here, and thank you for helping to keep our community safe.